He just learned to live with orange frogs.
I'm going to see if you can hear me in the back. I assume you do. This is a great sound system. Excellent, thank you. So welcome everyone. My name is Angela Morris. I work for the Chelan-Douglas Land Trust, and it's just really delightful to see you all here at a lunch and learn. And I'm guessing some of you have been to lunch and learn sessions before and know all about it. And for those of you that haven't, this is a series of educational presentations that we started offering a couple years ago. And really the purpose of them is to explore a topic that the land trust staff, board, the community is thinking about in the context of future work, ways that we can problem solve, things that we should be thinking about for the future. So all kinds of topics, really. We've covered things from wildlife biology to traditional ecological knowledge and stewardship, even a primer on conservation easements. So the topics are all over the place because we have a lot of things that we think about when we think about conservation. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get too far is that this year is the 40th anniversary of the land trust starting, which is a wonderful thing and worth a clap if you want to clap. And so this is something that the staff, especially the board, we're thinking about a lot is what came before us. What were the things that the folks, the founders, the people that shepherded and stewarded the land trust for the last 40 years, what were they thinking about for the future? And how is that informing how we do our work coming up? So that also informs the kinds of topics that we do for Lunch and Learns. I want to do a quick thank you, especially to Wenatchee Valley College for hosting us here today for free in this really, really lovely spot. And especially to Jennifer Hadersberger here, who's a professor, and her students are here in the audience with us. What is it, a ag soils class, I think. So super cool to have students here with us. You are the conservation leaders of the future, we hope. So welcome to you. On the topic of topics, you might wonder, well, what does mining have to do with the land trust? What could that possibly have to do with anything that we're thinking about or have thought about in the future? And there's a definite through line straight in which Diane will talk about. So if you're thinking about the Dry Gulch easement that the land trust holds, and then Saddle Rock, those are the locations that Diane is going to talk about today. So it very much has been on the land trust's mind about how mining and how the remediation is important following the closure of mines. So it is a pretty important topic. And then of course today we have Diane Groody with us, which many of you know her, retired geologist, worked for the Cannon Mine and the Azamara Mine, which is same company but different name, is that right? Yeah. So lived in the area for a long time, and I hear that you have given this similar talk many times, and each one's a little bit different. So I just want to say thank you ahead for bringing your knowledge, sharing your history, and all of your information with us today. We really appreciate it. So let's give Diane a warm welcome. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Oh wait, did you turn it off? Nope. Oh, it's still on. There you go. I have to be closer. Okay. Before we get started, I did not do a sound check with people on. We did. Oh, you did ahead of me. They haven't had any issues. Okay, so we're good. We do have folks on Zoom as well, so we'll be paying attention to us too. Yeah.
Okay, great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Good turnout. I really enjoy doing these presentations because the mine story is a pretty important one for this area. A lot of people don't even know about it. So how many of you remember the Cannon mine?
Well, I remember the leather mine.
Yeah, how many people worked there? Anybody here who worked there? Oh, come on, I wanted to review. Yeah, Dave Brown did, yeah. This is Goldie Silicious, our mascot. We're always competing with the apple industry. This is for those of you, okay, gotta point this or what? Okay. Oh, there, it has to have the little arrow on it. There you go. So for those of you who didn't ever see the mine, this is what it looked like at night, and this is just at the end of Miller Street, where you make the turn onto Circle Street, right by Appleatchee Stables, Appleatchee Riding Club. This is right across the street and underneath Appleatchee Riding Club. So the mill operated 24/7, so the lights were always on 364 days a year. At Christmas time, we used to put a big Christmas tree up on the head frame there. And we were, for several years, we were a corporate team in the Ridge to River. We were that Azamara Gold Blossoms. And our shirts said, we pick gold, not apples. I was in the canoe those years. But the story really goes back to the 1970s when gold was deregulated. Okay, so it was not again, oh, there it is, my little pointer thingy. It was at $35 an ounce until Nixon deregulated gold, and then all through the 70s it rose up to $800 an ounce or so in 1980. And that's what made the company I worked for, Azamara Oil of Canada, get involved in mineral exploration in the United States. So they had three properties. The first one that I worked on with them was in Silverton, Colorado. And then they had one in Nevada and they had Wenatchee, Washington. So when they were told me I was going to be going to Wenatchee, Washington, I had to look at a map to see where it was. I'd never heard of mining in Washington State before. But actually, oh, I should go back to this. The years that we mined were from 85 to 94, and you can see how the price was fluctuating up and down and really dropping when we began our exploration. So everything at the Cannon mine was very much on fast track to get in and get out before prices plummeted. We did not know how high they were going to stay, and of course no one knew they were going to go up to the values that they are at today. So there were actually 5 gold mines in the state of Washington in 1986. The one, Apex was up by Skycomish, Mini is by Carlton, and then the mine's up by Republic and the Cannon mine. And as we know, most of the districts that mined historically before the 80s, a lot of them left, they weren't reclaimed. There was no rules about reclamation, and so they just walked away and they left contaminated sites. And our local example is the what's called the D Reef, the Lovett mine, the Golden King mine. It's had different names, but up Squilchuck Road. So this is Squilchuck Road right here. You've all driven through this. This is would become Bedhouse Street right here. So this was active in the 50s and 60s. It was actually the 6th largest gold mine in the United States at the time. They took out 1 million ounces of gold and silver, but it was left, they left waste rock, they left old empty fuel tanks, they left the workings open where people could go underground. When we went underground there were old explosives left underground that were unstable. They had to be burned in place. We couldn't move them. We had to just burn them. But they also dumped all the tailings in Squilchuck Creek right here. So this summer, finally, the Department of Ecology listed the Lovett mine as a contaminated site. They found high hazardous levels of arsenic in the soil there, And they're working with the current owner to clean it up somehow, because it's just been sitting there unreclaimed for so many years. But lucky for us, in the 80s, when the Cannon mine, when Asmara came around, the state, the county had really strict regulations for mining. And so the Cannon mine was held to a much higher standard. Had to get a lot of permits, a lot of conditions of approval. And so we didn't have this toxic waste problem there. We had a lot of inspections by MSHA and OSHA and the Citizens Watch Group. They used to keep an eye on what the mine was doing. So we were heavily regulated. So I better stick to my notes or I'll get totally off track here. So how do we find the gold? This is the regional geology. Where where's my pointer? Oh shoot. Okay. Until I don't believe this very often. So this is the Wenatchee Valley, the Chumstick Basin. It's called between the Leavenworth Fault and the Eniac Fault. And it's filled with chumstick sediments that are sandstones and siltstones. And then running right up down through the east side of the Chumstick Basin is this Eagle Creek fault zone that has volcanics along it. So whenever you get faulting and volcanics, you create a situation where there's hot solutions and gases that circulate through the rock and it creates mineral deposits. So it was always known that there's mineralization along this fault. So the Lovett mine is located right here, or it's located down here. The Cannon mine is located right there, right along this fault. So I'm not going to say much more about the geology. I did a talk at Central last year, and it's on YouTube. It's called The Geology of the Wenatchee Gold Belt. So if you want to know more about the details of the geology, you can go to YouTube. But we'll have so this is the property that Asmara acquired just northwest of the old Lovett mine on the other side of the hill in 1981. So this is the end of Miller Street here, Circle Street. This is now the parking lot for where you go to hike up on Saddle Rock. But this is what it looked like in 1981. There's the Columbia River. And then we have the little Wenatchee Dome. Day site here is one of the igneous, the volcanic intrusion that bounds the ore zone on the east side. This is all the Eagle Creek Fault Zone here. And then the Saddle Rock andesite, this picture is taken from up on Saddle Rock, is on the west. And everything between Saddle Rock and the Wenatchee Dome is the ore zone. So this is where the gold mineralization lies, all in this little valley right here. This is the B reef knob of mineralized sediments. So we knew that there was mineralization along the fault zone because these little reefs, they call them, they stick up. They're harder than the surrounding sediments because they've been silicified by the solutions over millions of years from the volcanics rising up through the sediments. And that's where the metals get concentrated. So this is a property we started on. We had access to the underground right here. There was a portal. You could go underground in there. Anaconda had driven exploratory drifts in the 60s or sometime. And Ed Lovett had done some exploration there too. So we started our drilling program there. And there just happened to be 2 houses on the property. So I lived in this house here, and the project manager lived over here. Ed Follis lived in this house. And that's very unusual for exploration geologists. You don't usually live on the property. And it's kind of a mixed blessing in a way, but And then also right across the street from a town, so the Canyon Mine was really unique in a lot of ways, and that's one way is that we were right in town. So, and you can see a little way in underground here too. So that's our first drill station underground at the B Reef. We had acquired the property from Cypress Minerals. And they had, because they had they had some good intercepts in the drilling that they did from underground here. And so we went to follow up on that. They walked away from the property, but Asamara came in and followed up on their work. Our first drill station, and then two of the first locals we hired, Joe Carl and Leonard Shaw, if anybody knew them. They were such good, hardworking guys, and they helped us dewater the mine. They helped with everything we needed, and two of our first mine hands. And then our assayers came from Silverton, like I did. I came from Silverton, Colorado, and they set up a little assay lab in the old Lovett offices. We made that our office, and we had an assay lab there. So that's Dave Potter, one of our first assayers. We set up surface drills as well as the underground drills, and this is up at the A Reef. So if you hike up to Saddle Rock, you go right by the little A Reef that you can see used to have underground, have an opening. It's all plugged up, but there was an opening there at one time. So that we're drilling on the surface there, we had to put up soundproofing, we had to put up fences around the mud pits, you know, all the mining, the regulations to keep it safe. And because we had all kinds of people wandering around up there, walking their dogs. So, and that's first, you know, so it wasn't so noisy, but you see Saddle Rock in the background there. So again, back to the property we started on. So after about 9 months of drilling underground, we had delineated a little ore body here. We found the B West zone, we called it first off. And it was about 850,000 tons of mineable grade ore, pretty close to the surface. So Asamara presented the city and the county with a plan for a small open pit cyanide heap leach operation up Dry Gulch. Opening this up, it would have to take like some of Circle Street, and we're gonna have to buy up the land, and the city said, no way, we're not doing an open pit cyanide leach right in town. So we had to keep drilling. We didn't have enough ore for anything else. So this area was pretty well drilled out. Our only option, well, we just asked Appleatchee if we could set up some surface drills over the winter in their parking lot. And they said yes for 3 months. We had 3 months to drill in their parking lot over the winter. So we set up 2 surface drills. And I just pointed over. Over here, they were 100 feet apart. The one here on the west went down, vertical hole, didn't hit anything, was a dud. 100 feet away, we drilled, vertical hole, and we started getting core with visible gold in it. And we were like, wow, what's this? And so we drilled as many holes as we could that winter. We drilled 9 holes from that one spot in Appalachia's parking lot, and we found that there was quite a big deposit there. So that's our product, gold and silver in quartz calcite adularia veins was the high grade. I have a sample of it over there on the table, along with some of the old newspaper clippings that I saved over the years. So our little crew of, 5, 6 of us suddenly became big, and this became a pretty big deal. It was a big discovery. So with more drilling, we after we got done in Appalachia, we moved the surface drill to right behind my house, in that field, and we drilled down there and we found another deeper ore zone down there. So this is the B North zone that lies underneath Appalachie. This is the little V reef knob that sticks up, and the drilling we did out to the west. The initial little deposit that we wanted to do open pit. And then this is the zone that was regular beneath, right behind my house. We found that. So this would be Circle Street in here, and then there's the A reef that you pass on your hike up to Saddle Rock. Over here is Saddle Rock, andesite, dacite, whatever you want to call it. Over here is the Wenatchee Dome rock. So we were fortunate in that we could do all the development in the Rio Day site, because it's a really strong, competent rock, and we could make the openings big. It didn't have to put a lot of ground support on. In the ore zone, we did have to use more ground support. The ore zone is not as strong. So let's see what else. Oh, so we estimated was over 5 million tons, where this little deposit was only 850,000. This whole thing now is 5 million tons, and it was pretty mineable. So this shows you how close to the surface. So here's the little B reef knob sticking up here. This is that initial little ore body we found. And then you can see how it dives down. It gets really down to sea level down here. And then it comes up, it's folded and faulted. And then this is the B North zone that's underneath Appalachie. So you can see how deep, how much overburden there was there. And then here and how close to the surface this is. So the ore body pitches out to the north, there's nothing beyond that, and to the south, there's nothing beyond that. And at depth, we didn't find anything below it either, because they're like little hot springs deposits. They're little separate, individual, not that big of deposits, but there's several of them along the fault zone. Is it making sense?
Yeah.
I was gonna follow my script, but you know what? I'm not, so later I'll look back and say, I forgot to say that, I forgot to say. Okay, so what we had found became the second largest gold mine in the United States at the time. So the largest, anybody know the largest gold mine in the United States? That they mined it for 120 years, and Homestake in South Dakota, South Dakota. So we mined 4 million tons of ore. Homestake mined 40 million tons of ore over 120 years. We had 200 employees and a lot of contractors coming in and out. We mined 1,200 tons a day for 9 years and extracted 1.25 million ounces of gold and 2 million ounces of silver, which grossed the company $600 million on their $80 million investment. But if you think about today's prices, you can multiply that by 10. Probably we sold the gold at around 400 an ounce. So Homestake was bigger, but Homestake became a Superfund site, and it polluted the Cheyenne River with arsenic for decades. So really, which mine was more successful? The Canyon mine didn't pollute and didn't cause problems to the environment. So here's the veins underground. That's a piece over there in the table is a piece of this vein right here. And we also had the host rock. I keep forgetting if I do this, you can't hear me. The host rock was also mineralized, shot up with pyrite bearing, gold bearing pyrite in the wall rock. So it meant that we could mine large blocks of ore because the wall rock itself was mineralized, and then the veins would sweeten the grade to make it a higher grade. So it was very economical to be able to mine these large blocks of ore. Azamara did exploration up and down the Eagle Creek Fault for 10 miles. Here's Wenatchee River, Columbia River, the city of Wenatchee. The Cannon Mine's located here, LD Lovett Day Mine's located here. Most of the target areas that Azamara drilled out, and then later Kimberly Gold came in 2007 and also did drilling in these areas. There's more ore down there under Stemilt, but it's undefined. It's really hard to get to. It's under 100 feet of basalt cover, and drilling through the basalt, it just eats up the bits. The structures are vertical, so drilling vertical holes doesn't work very well. You really have to go in underground, probably from Stemilt Creek, and drill from underground to really define what's down there. So far, no company has proposed doing that. But that was the final, in Kimberly's final report, that was their recommendation. And Azamara in 1988 also had plans to drive a 6,000-foot drift from, I guess, from Squilchuck. But it never materialized because the prices just weren't good enough then. So, yeah, Azamara did 57 miles of drilling. We had just built up warehouses of core. We had to hire a lot of geologists to log it all. And of course, the drilling up here, whoopsie, the drilling up to the northwest is very limited, right? Because houses and people, and you can't drill from the surface that way either. So we had no underground access. So this is all still very undefined, but there's a lot of potential all the way along the fault. So because we had now found this big ore deposit, we had to go fast tracking the permitting because, like I said, the prices were dropping and kind of unpredictable. So Azamara had to get 35 state permits, 47 conditions of approval. Public hearings were done, the EIS had to be written. They had to change the zoning to industrial. And they had to widen and strengthen Miller Street for the trucks, that the haul trucks that drove up and down, taking the concentrate down to the train yard. So that was all done in 10 months. Marie Garrett was our environmentalist at the time who really worked hard on that. A $1.7 million bond was posted to ensure reclamation, and they promised zero subsidence to the surface. So no disruption to Surface Street or to Appleatchee, which meant we had to cement the openings underground. Here's our first crew. I was hoping somebody might come today who is in that picture, but our crew at on the day of our first day of production. So John Tofton was our engineer, and where is you? He's over there. Where am I? I'm right there talking to that guy. Dave Allen was our safety guy. Job Service did the hiring, Wenatchee Job Service, and so they did it without discrimination, and they put women driving truck, women in the mill, women in the assay lab. And for the 80s, that was pretty unusual. And Azamara hadn't really, not Azamara, but the guys hadn't really worked with women on their crew before. So another way that the Cannon Mine was unique is we had very diverse team of people. That's Gary Bates, who still lives in Wenatchee. He's our first mine manager. This is where they dried the concentrate. So this is our first load of concentrate. That's 5 ounces per ton. That was the first load that came out of the mill. So that's Gary Bates. So we had to fast track the underground development as well. So they brought in these big drills that were double barrel drills that could drill out a round really fast. And we were doing like 20 headings a day, 500 feet a day on that.
What power is out? What power is out?
Power or just the?
The power.
It's crazy.
It was from the ceiling.
Oh, okay. So this is the miners are loading around in the ore zone. You can see the sediments there. The bedding and the sediments that looks kind of like it does in the rest of the valley. And we had to also excavate into the mountainside to build the mill. So we, this is the little bee reef knob. And we had to cut this hillside back in order to put all the mill buildings. And we had to sink this shaft 620 feet down. All concrete lined, all the way down. And that's just looking from the mill site into towards town, Columbia River and Wenatchee, and that's the head frame that was there. The shaft was just used to hoist the ore out into the mill. We went in and out by rubber tire equipment. We didn't go up and down the shaft. So that was used to hoist the ore. And I really wish they would have left the head frame there and made like a little museum, you know, to the project. But this is the bottom of the shaft and the primary crusher. So all the ore was dropped down to the primary crusher and crushed down to about the size of your fist. And then it came out the shaft from there into the mill. So here's a picture of the mill buildings. Does that look funny to me? This is Miller Street, Circle Street, Appleatchee, the Wenatchee Dome, and then here's the cut we made to kind of tuck the mill buildings behind the Wenatchee Dome for soundproofing and just so it wasn't seen from town so much. Here's the little bee reef knob is there, where we, you know, initially started our underground drilling. And then the ore body all lies under this property. It just fits very neatly into this package. The whole area that was mined is right in here. So next time you drive down Circle Street, you know that you're driving right across a whole bunch of concrete underground. And there's that little, no, never mind, just keep going. So we also had to build this huge tailings dam. We had to excavate off the overburden and get down to the bedrock and look for any zones of weakness in there, because this tailings dam, it was imperative that it be super strong to hold like 6 million tons of slime that was going to be slurried up from the mill. Okay. And then all the rain, all the 100-year flooding events, you know, had to be really, really strong because it's right above town. So it is the largest earthen structure in the state of Washington. There's no concrete in this dam. It's all compacted sand, gravel, clay that they just dumped on top of that bedrock I just showed you. Oopsie, that didn't happen. These are huge trucks driving back and forth, compressing it, and they look like little ants there, but it's all big equipment. So this was all built to put all the tailings up Dry Gulch. Azamara didn't get the federal discharge permit from the federal government because it would have taken too long, and so they could not allow any discharge from the mine. No water could be released. It had to all go up Dry Gulch. So our mine engineer had a glass case on the wall of his office, and it had a gun inside it, and it said, "In case of dam failure, break glass." So this is an actual dam failure that happened up in BC about 10 years ago. And if the Cannon Mine Dam had failed, it would have been a huge disaster, but it didn't. It didn't. So this is a picture of Don Cannon at our main portal. This was the only way in and out of the mine. He's the person we named the mine for because he was the geologist up in Canada who arranged for us to pick up the property and to do the exploration there. one of our first computer plots. You know, all of our work was done pre-computer. This was 40 years ago. We didn't have computers or GPS or anything. It was all hand-drawn maps on Mylar and a compass and a tape. But we had our first computer plot. It was pretty exciting. So here's that little portal I just showed you. And this is how we got into the mine. So we go down through the Rio Day site and around, and then get down to the first level of ore down here. And we put these cross cuts into the ore. So the colored area is the ore zone. And then they continued on down and around and around and around. It went on down, down, down. And we did 50-foot cross cuts into the ore zone. So this is the B North zone, and it doesn't show the rest of the mine there. This is how we got in and out in these John Deere tractors. And if you went on a tour, you might have ridden in the back of one of those. In the mining method, we drove in, like I said, these 50-foot levels in this ore zone. This is the ore zone here. And then they would drive a raise up and they would drill and blast off 10-foot slices of ore. So they would blast this off, and then the truck would come in the bottom and haul it out. And then they'd back up and drill another 10-foot slice, haul it out, until this was all opened up and all removed. And then the backfill crew would come in from the cement plant that we had, and they would dump cement and fill this whole thing up with cement. They'd drive right in across the top of it and drive right in on the cement and dump more. And then when it got filled up in there, there was another machine that would like sling it in. So after the truck couldn't drive anymore, they would sling it and try to fill it to the very top, because remember, zero subsidence was promised. So we had to try to get that cement as tight as the rock was to hold the surface up. And so far, I don't think there's been any subsidence. I don't know. But so we would do that, and then they'd go to the next level up here, and they would do the same thing back here and remove all of this until this whole pillar was removed and then was all cemented all the way up. And then we'd go over 24 feet and we would do this pillar here, cement that whole thing. And then after the cement cured, after a couple months, we would take the center pillar out. So we're getting almost 100% extraction of the ore in certain parts of the mine.
So you were filling up each stope with concrete?
Just every other one was concrete. And then we saved the rock from when the development headings that we did, all the Rio Day site was stockpiled. And then that went into the center pillars when they were removed. Every other one is cemented. And the other parts are filled with waste rock, because we had to get rid of that waste rock somehow. You can't leave that on the surface. So here's the our mine boss, Ernie Omaha. They're drilling down to one of those 10-foot sections, drilling down to the next level to blast that off. And you can see how this is how the stope is open out here. And the miner down below hauling the broken rock out and then dumping it down the ore pass down to the underground crusher. And that just shows you the open stope, what it looked like underground. This is the backfill process. Like I just said, they would come in and dump it and then drive out across it and keep dumping the concrete in here. They'd put up a chain link fence to keep it back. And here is the truck, backfill truck going in over the concrete, cement, whatever you call it, and dumping a load in. And just until this whole thing gets filled up. So this miner is operating it with remote control because it's too dangerous to go have people go inside there. And then there's the mesh holding back the concrete with Mark Mudlin, one of our mining engineers, looking at it. So we pre-sold the gold at $400 an ounce and made about $240 an ounce. The mill produced about 450 ounces a day. So it was about $180,000 a day. This is inside the mill. These huge rod and ball mills would grind the rock. It would come up like this size. And then they would grind the rock smaller. Then we had a separator that would take out the coarse gold. And then the rest of it would get ground down to -200 mesh, like talcum powder, like really, really fine powder. And then our milling was a flotation process where you add chemicals to the water and you pump in air and it makes bubbles. And the chemicals have affinity for the metals. So the metals stick to the bubbles and then they float to the top. And then you skim off the top and you put it into the next one and they float to the top and then you skim it. And it would go through until it was concentrated 25 times higher than what it came in. So we could send 0.2 ounces per ton gold to the mill and it would come out at 5 ounces per ton concentrate. But that's also the stuff that had to go up to the tailings dam, this black sludge, slimy stuff that was left over after the metals were taken out. So in 1988, Gulf Canada bought Azamara oil up in Canada. And they became kind of joint operators. And because prices were dropping, and because we had already mined most of the ore, they decided to close the mine in 1994. They could have forfeited that bond they put down for reclamation and just walked away and left the city with 1.7 million to do something with the site, like we're left with the D-Reef, right? Lovett Mine. But they didn't. Instead, this Canadian company who doesn't live here, they spent almost 8 years doing the reclamation up there, and they spent $6 million for us. So for reclamation, these cuts had to be recontoured. All the buildings had to be removed. This is the mill, buildings, the head frame. This is the little ventilation portal where there's this huge fan that blew air underground. And then here's the main portal there. And all these roads, it all had to come out to look like what it looks like today, right? Like it doesn't, like you don't think much of it when you see up there. It's actually kind of messy look, but it's an amazing job of reclamation. So here's the cut where the mill buildings used to be. Here's where the shaft used to be. Here's where that little ventilation portal was, and then the main portal. It's all plugged up, it's all filled in, it's all planted with beautiful native vegetation. The tailings dam was an even bigger challenge. So you had 60 acres of black, wet sludge up there behind the tailings dam. So they had to dry it. They like used sprinklers and sprinkled the water and aerated it to get it to dry. And then once it was dry, they put down geotextile fabric on 60 acres of the sludge stuff once it was partially dry. So then, as a barrier to the contaminated stuff below, they put a foot of gravel. So the landscaping cloth and the gravel keep the contaminants down, and so they can't get into the soil. Then they covered it with 5 feet of topsoil on top of that, 60 acres. And then all planted with this beautiful native vegetation that we see up there now. And then below the dam, there are wetlands. There's a series of settling ponds that are also all planted, but it serves to hold any contaminants that may come out, because there's discharge coming out of the tailings dam, and these wetlands are built to trap any contaminants, any metals. But we were lucky in that, what I read about the reclamation, I wasn't there for the reclamation, but they said when they tested the discharge, it wasn't real high in metals because we didn't have copper, lead, zinc. We just had gold and silver, and we removed the gold and silver. So the metal content is not very high. The discharge is not very acidic either because they mixed in some of the concrete, which neutralized the acidity as they were mining. Some of that concrete got mixed in, and what's up in the tailings dam is not. We don't have to worry about acid mine discharge, and we didn't use cyanide. So here's what it looks like after it was covered with the fabric and the gravel and the topsoil we planted. 60 acres. And this is a picture of these wetlands below the dam that serve to as filtration. And this is what you see today when you hike up there. So they kind of recontoured this and took out the roads, and you just see that. So it's a really stellar job of reclamation. This guy was acknowledged by the DNR, given an award for his leadership. He's a Canadian environmentalist who did the reclamation here for us. Lynn Callow. And the DNR said you'd be hard pressed to ever tell there were mining activities here. It's true. It's kind of sad. I kind of wish they had flagged something. And I think it's still monitored for metals and acidity. I'm not sure about that, but I think someone still does some water monitoring below the dam. So I recently was up in Victoria, BC, and I went to see the reclamation of an old limestone quarry up there to see the job they did, and it was the same size as the Cannon mine, as the tailings dam reclamation, 60 acres, and it's called Butcher Gardens. We couldn't have that at Dry Gulch. So that's the end. Thank you. So questions? Yes.
I remember when the silver were actual ponds and they were poisonous green color. What was that?
Oh, what was that? Well,
Question thing.
oh yeah, repeat the question. She said she remembers. I was gonna ask who, if anybody worked on the reclamation, number one, because I wasn't here. I don't know that much about the reclamation. But she asked why the settling ponds. She remember seeing the settling ponds below the dam back in the 90s or something when they were doing it. Why was it an icky green color? Well, I don't really know, but I would guess like there's algae and stuff in it, and if this is before they planted on it, it was still drying out. You know, there's nasty contaminants, and it's the reason, I should have said, Azamara in 2007, they sold the property to Appleatchee, right? And then the land trust got the easement, and the management of the site is left to these conservation groups now. With covenants, Azamara made the covenants, no messing up the work that was done up there, no disturbing the vegetation, no disturbing that layer of gravel or that layer of cloth with ATVs or dirt bikes, or, you know, it's just people and horses on foot. Because you need to maintain the integrity and of the site and all that work that was done. So I don't know why it was green, but tailing ponds usually are big colors. Yeah. Yes, back.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but that whole area has really high mineral content. So if you hike to the top of Saddle Rock, then when it's wet, there's like a aquamarine blue pond that forms up there. And I don't know if that's copper or the city is supposed to do something about that divot that collects aquamarine blue water. And they've done a lot of work on rock, but I don't know that particular pond. So it may not be unique to the tailings at Dry Gulch, it may just be some of the high mineral content.
Just the minerals in the soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I didn't see
That
it.
was amazing. Thank you for letting me have my student. We are going to look for the nature for our
Oh,
student
okay.
class. So you all can stay here as long as you want.
Yeah, it's all the time.
We have nice.
So no questions from the students?
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
Are the tailings ever gonna become non-toxic and stable, like after 500,000 years?
Well, yeah, a lot of those, in the flotation process, because you don't use cyanide. We use chlorine, there's some xanthates in there, there's a lot of it is sort of, organic based stuff that they put into the reagents in the flotation bins. Are not that toxic, and a lot of it breaks down, it does, but it's also sealed off. It's not, it just sits there. You know, it leaches out, but, there wasn't a big concern by the Department of Natural Resources when they released the company from the reclamation process. You know, signed off on that, it was done. And they didn't have to keep monitoring the discharge or anything. It's not acidic and it's not high in metals, so. It's not that bad, yeah. Luckily, it's one of the ways that we're unique. Yeah, but the other side of the mountain, the old Levitt mine needs to be cleaned up. Yes,
We're gonna find a lot more information about the mining in this area. I went down to the museum, I was surprised, they had nothing on land.
well, I have the, over there, there's a publication that the museum did about 10 years ago or so. And that's, they did a 2-part series on the mining of the area, and you can get those little publications. Talk to Chris Rager.
Yeah.
Chris, you had a question?
I did, when you're walking up toward the dam and old tailings and everything. And you're walking up and on your right, on the hill, high up on the hill, it looks like a covered up mining tunnel entrance. What is that?
Oh, well, up above the tailings dam up there was an old silica mine. It was, what's his name? Had the silica mine up there, so there's old mining stuff up there,
So it
yeah.
wasn't part of Cannon.
No, it was there before Cannon. And then if you go up Squilchuck, there's they used to mine the white sandstone up there too. The Wenatchee Formation is real high in silica and they would mine it for flux and stuff. So there's different kinds of mining in the area. It's kind of funny that Wenatchee considers itself so an apple growing town and not a mining town. It really is. Yes.
Can you explain what's going on in that photo? It looks like there's some base rock, gray base rock, and then some fractures and.
This
the
photo?
content up in there?
Well, it's native gold for one there, and then it just shows 2 periods of veining. When I did my geology talk, I talked about there's 2 periods of veining and they cross cut each other. So this is one early stage of veining that's higher grade, and then it was cross cut by this other stage of veining. But what else were you wondering about?
What's the base rock in there, the gray stuff?
Inside the quartz there, it's just the host rock. It's like the solutions come in and they like eat up, and there's inclusions within the quartz veins of the country rock. Strong. Yeah, like I said, I did a YouTube video of the geology of the Wenatchee Gold Belt. You can Google that and learn more about the geology. Did you have a question?
I had read that there was an old Chinese mine in the Wenatchee Dome. Was that anywhere near where your native was?
Well, nothing was in the Wenatchee Dome. The Wenatchee Dome's not mineralized. It's the source of it's the heat source and the source of the solutions that were percolating through the sandstone. So if you want to look for gold here, you look in the sandstones. You look in the hard knobs that stick up, like the D Reef knob on Squilchuck, that big, huge that big cliff of rock. And there were that they say, I don't know for sure, but that the Chinese came early, they were panning the Columbia River and they found gold at the mouth of Squilcha. And they followed it up to the D Reef outcrop. And then there used to be these old ladders that went up to openings in the D Reef before the Lubbock mine. And they said that was like built by the Chinese and stuff. I don't know for sure, but there used to be old ladders. I think they've fallen down now, but they started mining at the Lubbock mine in the 1890s. So if it was Chinese, I don't know, but prospectors. So yeah, this area's had mining since the 1890s. Yes.
How was it being a woman working with all those men? You wanna go into that or not?
I'm just so happy to have this talk done. Well, like I said, job service did the hiring, and so Gwen showed up on the first day of the job, and the men were like, "You're gonna be on the backfill crew? What?" You know, I mean, it was shocking it was an important thing to do, to be there, but it was a transition for Azamara, for sure, and I didn't have much trouble in the early days. You know, we were just a small crew working together doing the exploration and stuff, and I traveled all around doing exploration. But the mine management changed a lot. Every time a new manager would come in, they'd fire the engineers and they'd bring in new engineers and they'd fire and so there was we all knew each other at the beginning and everybody was just who they were. It didn't matter. But when the new management came in, sometimes they would question or refuse to work with me. Exactly. But so anyway, yeah. We addressed that. Steve Lacy, brought a class action lawsuit on behalf of the women at the mine back in the 90s, and that was resolved in court. Yeah. Like a lot of women in the 80s were doing that. Yeah.
I want to share, there's a lot of suspicion over history with how mining has been done. It's not always been pretty. And this is a very uplifting. And for me, living in this community, I had this feeling that we were putting this tailings up above this dam and we were just getting it out of sight. This was my feeling. And I thought it would have been the cyanide method. I didn't know, wasn't researching it. And I'm finding this kind of a good day to hear about this.
Yeah, that's why I like giving these talks, is people don't know this, and it's just like kind of gotten buried. It's a very important part of Wenatchee's history, and it's so unique in so many ways, and it's a model for how to do mining without having a big environmental impact. It really is, because it's right across the street from the town, like, except in Butte, Montana, maybe you have that, but that's a total mess. Yeah.
Hi, Diane. My name's Matthew. I'm the founder of the East Wenatchee Dog Pack. And we were invited up last year by the Dry Gulch Preserve LLC to do kind of like it was important for us to get up there and begin to educate dog owners on how to keep their dogs on leash, stay on trail, and then pick up after themselves too. What I was wondering is this presentation, this would be really good for me to use as like a walking and talking point for people because we'll start doing group dog hikes together up the Dry Gulch Preserve, probably in October when everything kind of cools down, snakes go to sleep. So is this presentation available maybe through the CDLT website or something else?
Yes.
We're recording.
Okay, great.
Available. Yeah.
You just reminded me, I'm forgetting to say the questions. Dang. So he asked, was this presentation going to be available on the CDLT website? Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you.
That's good. And also the other one I did for Central is on YouTube. So you can just Google that.
Great.
Sorry about the questions.
Is the YouTube line under the channel or just by itself?
It's the geology of the Wenatchee Gold Belt, I think it's called. It's with Nick, it's one of Nick Zentner's things. It's at Central. So it's just on the YouTube. I don't know if it's on his channel. Any questions on Zoom? Oh, okay, wait, right back here.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had a ventilation shaft with a big fan, but how did you monitor the safety of the atmosphere down in the depths of the mine?
Oh, they did. The safety guy came around and checked headings every day and would let us know which ones were, we had a map of the air and we could shut off air doors to divert the air to where we were working. But there was one time I was down in a heading mapping, that was a closed off heading, and the safety guy came down and he used his monitor and he said, "You shouldn't be alive right now. There's not a bear. You need to get out of here right now." So, yeah,
So were
we
they
have to
just-
pay attention to that.
Just monitoring oxygen levels or also carbon dioxide or other gases? They must be.
Yeah. Cause it was rubber tire, we had diesel trucks running underground, so carbon monoxide, it was carbon monoxide we monitored, yeah. Which displaces the oxygen. So if carbon monoxide was high, you weren't supposed to be there. Yeah,
What's the story about? Something about Wenatchee School District kind of having something to do with stopping cannon mine? I've heard this.
well, there's a lot of myths about the cannon mine. One is that there was a tunnel underground to the
Yes.
Igloo Tavern. Yeah, you might have heard that one, and
That's true.
and we tried to mine under the city, but they wouldn't let us, and unless that happened after I left in 1989, I left, so I don't know what went on. We did the 4-year mine plan in 1988 and gave the mine 4 more years to go based on the ore that we had and the prices, and so everybody knew it was gonna probably shut down in the mid-90s, but unless they, and I don't know if they did some exploration and found something, but no, I don't think so.
Like the drilling where you show that didn't go into the city areas, that's.
No, we
Where
had,
came from though?
we had leased land, we stayed within our leases, we paid the leaseholders royalties. But they may be talking about, we approached the city for exploration. We drilled in some cherry orchards, didn't find anything. We drilled, that's a narrow fault zone that runs straight line. And that's where the mineralization is. So it isn't really under the city unless there's a second parallel fault zone that we don't know.
Just that edge that you were showing up on one of the slides.
Yeah.
You said, well, they couldn't really go in there because there's houses.
Right, you can't follow the fault to the northwest, and it's private property all the way up there, and so. Yeah, can't do exploration there except for maybe underground,
I think that's.
but it's super expensive, setting up a surface drill and drilling is super expensive. And like I said, we set up 2 surface drills at Appleatchee, one hit the ore zone on the very edge, the other one missed. So that's how hard they are to find. We just happened to hit the edge of that ore zone, and then we found out it was big with more drilling. They're easy to miss. Yeah,
Were the miners and management paid on a flat hourly rate, or was it paid on a percentage of profits or bonuses based on how much gold was drawn?
they were hourly and then production bonuses based on how much they moved, how much ore they moved, yeah, both. Mhm. Yeah, it was a good paying job for Wenatchee, Wenatchee was very supportive through the whole EIS process, and they asked a lot of good questions during the public hearings. They were concerned that it be done right, but they were very supportive of having the mine there because it did supply a lot of good jobs. And we tried to hire locally as much as possible and train people. So. Questions on Zoom? Okay, back there.
I'd just like to comment that when the mine closed, I think Wenatchee benefited from the state Department of Employment coming in and helping to retrain the employees, and then we benefited as a community through that retraining, and they got employed throughout the valley as a job. They did a fabulous job with that. So not only was the mine reclaimed, but the skills of the people working the mine were reclaimed and refurbished.
Yeah, his comment was about the benefit, not just the reclamation, but the retraining of the employees at the Cannon Mine. Job service helped to retrain people and get them into other jobs, and brought a lot of people to Wenatchee who stayed. I mean, I came from Colorado and I'm still here. Kind of. But a lot of people stayed here because they liked living here. It was great to be able to, you know, if you're a miner, you don't have to get on a bus and go 25 miles off to the job site. You just, you know, just come home after work. It's challenging, like when we first started doing the development in the Wenatchee Dome. The blasting was really loud because we're on the surface. And we had to go knock on the neighbors' doors and tell them, we're gonna be blasting at 4 o'clock. And they would complain, and so then we had to put the blasting on a schedule where it was like 9 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. And not any other time, so people knew there's these big blasts were happening twice a day. And we're trying to get the development done really fast, so. There was a conflict there, but worked it out.
How much gold is there between Dry Gulch and School Chuck now?
How much gold between Dry Gulch and School Chuck?
Yeah.
Well, you mean along the fault zone?
Yes, oh, yeah.
Well, you have the Cannon Mine was a separate little ore body, and then you have the Lovett Mine, which was a separate little ore body. They're both mined out.
There's no more gold left
Well,
in that area.
there's some reserves in the Lovett Mine, possibly if you could strip the surface. You know, there's all that like stuff that's caving in and there's that big rock sticking up. If you could strip it and mill that, but you'd have to build a mill, you'd have to get a whole bunch of environmental permits. It probably isn't worth it, the cost of it, but yeah, there's gold in at the D reef still. But more so, you know, if you notice, they mined 1 million tons and extracted 1 million ounces of gold and silver both. So they were mining quite high grade stuff. So there's all that tailings dumped in Swilchuck Creek that could be, it's already been milled. It could be like maybe heap leached if it's amenable to that. You might be able to get gold out of the tailings in Swilchuck and clean it up at the same time. It might pay for a cleanup program, but I'm sure they're looking at that though. Questions on Zoom? Oh, no questions on Zoom.
Question, how does the arsenic get into the same areas with the gold?
Yeah, in this deposit, arsenic is associated with the gold. So we found arsenic anomalies in the soil over the deposits. That's one exploration tool. You do soil sampling over the deposit and there's arsenic in the soil. And it comes from the sulfides. Arsenopyrite is, the gold has, you know, it's part of the ore body. From the minerals that are in the ore body, they're high in arsenic.
Arsenic.
Yeah.
Stuck in the rocks, basically.
Yeah.
All the volcanic.
Yeah, but then when you mill it and you grind it up, you release it, you put it in the tailings and you have water running through it, then you get arsenic in the water. That's the problem.
But it's a little bit stuck in ponds.
Yeah, it's just natural. But it gets concentrated in the tailings. Yeah, his question was about the arsenic in the rock, where does it come from? Yeah.
There's no cyanide must be used to extract gold. Comment on that process of how that works.
Well, oh geez. I have never worked at a cyanide heap leach, but they're all over Nevada. They just, you know, they put it out on the surface with maybe Dave. Where did Dave go? There it is. Do you know how cyanide heap leach works?
Yeah, you crush it down, spread it out, put a bunch of sprinklers up on top, have a membrane underneath. So the cyanide leaches down, hits the membrane, and then is funneled into the mill site or wherever. It's nasty though.
Yeah, the cyanide leaches the gold out, right? And then you have to process the cyanide to get the gold out.
Right.
Yeah, it's nasty. We didn't do that. They would have never fermented that here.
So
It's more cost effective though. But
I worked in the emergency room during this period and they had enough cyanide up there, so. We had cyanide treatment kits and protocols in the ER. And one day we got a tour of the mine
Yeah,
up in there, and got all the way down inside and wandered around in there and saw how they were.
yeah, well. Yeah, I know, I was on the mine rescue team and the thing we were always concerned about was the chlorine in the mill. That chlorine gas, I think it's heavy and it could go, if it got released at the mill, it could like go down the shaft possibly. And like contaminate the area in the mine, but. I don't think we had, maybe they had cyanide, maybe there was a small
May have
cyanide
been
process, I
where
don't
they
know.
were doing the assays. Was there any cyanide in there?
In the what?
Where they're doing the assay work?
Cyanide in the assay lab, no, I don't think so, I don't know. Cause if you had that in the ER, trained to treat people for that. We had to train a whole mine rescue team to go underground in the event of a fire, because you couldn't like call 911 and say we have a fire underground. Come. They are not prepared for that, so we had to have our own fire crew. We were trained up there at North Bend in with the Chelan-Douglas firefighters. I was on the team and we crawled into burning buildings and put out fires. But luckily that didn't happen. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple things just to add, so Diane